understand because she is fairly staunch. But anyway, okay, going live.
We're live. What a segue.
Hello, everyone. We were having some interesting conversations before. So yeah, today I am. Oh, and I should actually, once we're done, I got to tell you like another just small piece of information about that,
Sure.
Sebastian, that it's just sort of relevant, that it's basically, anyway, so it's unimportant right now. Right now, we are talking about free real estate in the solar system. We're going to have a fun episode. I am very tired. I have not been sleeping well, but that allowed me to make a video at 1 a.m. on my second channel, which you should check out, Govern Max. It's a video about the Supreme Court case, Chicago versus Fulton.
That's a great name. I like that name, Govern Max.
Yeah, Fulton?
No, Govern Max.
Yeah, Govern Max.
For the channel.
Yeah. Yeah, I just thought I got to put my name in everything, right?
Yeah.
I have Gravity Max, so I got to make Govern Max. But it's very interesting, actually, just starting this second channel and starting to do some research on like just what the government does from day to day has really taught me a lot about it already, and it's just so fascinating. This case, Chicago versus Fulton, it's like a case about like the U.S. bankruptcy code. Like, it's really interesting. The government's actions, and we'll get started in a second, but this is just a brief tangent. The government's actions only come up when they like are very like, I don't know, relevant, like when they touch on a few issues that like the public finds interesting. But like, I would say 90% of what the government does is just very like mundane. But you know, it's not mundane because this is establishing like if you have to file for bankruptcy, which hopefully you never have to do, this case has just determined that like if you have your car impounded, this was the issue of the case, and you file for bankruptcy, they will not return you the car unless you pay the fines, which when you file for bankruptcy, like most of your debts just vanish, essentially. So not being able to get your car back is like sort of like strange. Like there are a few things that are exempt that you still have to pay for once you've gone bankrupt, like student loans particularly. Even if you go, did you know that if you go bankrupt, you still have to pay your student debt? Like all your other debt is gone. And it really but it really tanks your credit score, obviously, and it's very bad to go bankrupt, but like you still have to pay your student debt. So
that's tough.
Yeah, because a lot of it is, I think, public debt or something. I am not an expert still. Get a lawyer if you're going bankrupt. But anyway, all that being said, you should check out the second channel because it's really interesting. And I think it's next Friday the 29th or whatever day is Friday. The last Friday in January, I'm going to do a recap of everything the government has done this month. That is what is going to be a monthly thing now on the second channel, Govern Max. Go check it out. It's pretty cool. But that being said, so that's essentially a pre-plug because now we're just going to go into the plugs. So I feel like that fits in because I don't have an official plug slide for that. But let's start with visit the Gravity Max website at gravitymaxmedia.com. It is a website that I own, the domain. So check it out. There's news, there's books, so you can read samples of my books. Pretty cool. Then Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and Patreon. Links in the description.
Give
Gravity
us
Max social media.
Money. If you whoever
money.
you know, I'll make something right here. Whoever gives us the first donation, as long as it's not someone that we know, I will make something special for you, or you know what, we might just let you on the Gravity Max live stream. You can be our guest.
Oh yeah, if you want to be a guest, the first patron, the first patron can be a guest star.
It will be an extra episode all about you, whoever you are.
No, not all about you.
Yes,
you'll just be on. All
about you.
No, you can come on the show and be a guest because we always like to bring in new people. So honestly, that's a win-win situation. So, yeah. But seriously though, we want to set things up like once we get like enough patrons, we want to do like a patrons only monthly stream. I forget what we wanted to make it about, but we need patrons first before we can figure out what we want to do. But it'll be fun. But yeah, I mean, not to sound desperate for money, really, check out the other social media for updates when I feel like it. I mean, we're on at the same time every week, so you shouldn't really need updates. But, sometimes I feel so inclined to share news articles relating to space. So if you find that interesting, you might want to check that out. But anyway, also follow Sebastian on social media and check out his YouTube channel, 128 Seconds, where he explains videos in 128 seconds. They are the short form counterparts to our long form videos. He has some great videos up recently. I really like the one about Stalin and Trotsky.
Yes.
It's just so fascinating.
That one was
and so links,
a lot of
yeah,
research. Yeah, links in the description.
yeah.
I actually don't have a Twitter anymore, so
Oh wait, what happened? What
um,
happened to your? Okay, I'm gonna
I got
black this out. What
no.
happened to
I
your
just
Twitter?
got
You get banned?
no. I didn't get banned.
Okay. Well, I know they've banned a lot of people recently. I think they banned like 70,000 people
Wow.
in the last few weeks. So I was just wondering. So what happened to your Twitter? Tell us.
I personally deactivated my account just
Okay.
because I am going to be reducing my social media presence, obviously not on YouTube. Just
Hmm.
because college is coming up and colleges can take
Okay.
things in weird directions, and like none of my tweets were political except for
Uh-huh.
one, which and the
I will
gimmick.
just say your social media is very like intentionally like comedic, I would say.
Yes.
So I can see how you might, well, your Twitter at least. Your Instagram is more serious, but so I can understand why you might want to take that down, but yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, but basically it was just it was a stupid comedy account, and I was like,
Hmm.
A, it doesn't really relate back to the brand. Like my link, I'm not
Yeah.
sure if you can still access my profile because it's deactivated, but
Hmm.
me deactivating my Twitter literally has nothing to do with the Twitter bans or
Okay.
like Trump getting banned or any of that. It's just
Yeah.
college is coming up for me, and I
Yeah, that
just
makes
don't
sense.
want anything to hinder me. Even though there was probably
Yeah,
nothing on
sure.
it, I'm just being paranoid.
Mhm.
But there you go.
Yeah, I know. I find it fun. No, I think we've essentially like they would always say at school like be careful what you put online. Like
Yeah.
colleges look at it. I feel like with the Gravity Max live stream, I think we have successfully oversaturated the potential for them to look into us because if they wanted to you know like thoroughly investigate everything
Hmm.
about me or you, they
Hmm.
would have to watch like 100 hours of stream.
And that's
And if you
free
are
watch
doing
time.
so, Mr. Administrator or Mrs. Administrator, uh, thank you. Thank you for the support. And I apologize for making you watch all of this, but hopefully you enjoy it.
Hopefully you learned
Anyway,
something.
links to those things in the description. I will remove the Twitter link actually from the description promptly. So the next thing is my book. My second book, sequel to the first one. It's a sci-fi book, and it's pretty cool. It's fun, futuristic. Uh, I spent a lot of time writing it, like during the pandemic. Did a few edits, and I'm pleased with it. It's been out for a while, so I highly recommend you get it. And I'm gonna try and I'm changing up my schedule a little bit. I don't know. I'm sort of trying to get my third book out a little early.
Mm.
So that's going to be a surprise at some point this year is the third book. Probably going to be out earlier than the schedule would predict. The schedule would predict if there are any avid fans. Like previously, I would say I was shooting for October 1st. But I already have like a complete first draft of the third book. So I was just working on the fourth one essentially
Hmm.
in the meantime. But then I realized, wait a minute, I might as well just work on the third one. Also, because I want to have it published before I turn 17, so that I can say I wrote a trilogy by the age of 16, uh, stuff like that. So I guess that gives you a sort of idea of the timeline of when it might come out.
Yeah.
But anyway,
Looking forward to it.
read a bottled up flame because the next one is going to come out sooner than you may think, and so you want to be all caught up. You don't want to get behind. So, with that all being said, it's free real
It's free
estate.
real estate.
Space is free real estate. There is some guy, I think, who is selling plots on the moon for like $20 an acre. Don't trust him. He is not, he has no claims to the moon. No one does. Well, it's interesting actually. This is just something
Mm-hmm.
fascinating, is that this guy essentially, the 1967 Outer Space Treaty says that no country or entity, like no country government entity, can claim land in space. But this guy's like, wait a minute, I'm not a government. So he's making a lot of money from selling people undefensible claims on the moon, which is just so fascinating because I imagine this is going to become a lawsuit in like 30, 40 years. Some
Probably.
company, like, some big company is going to be like, yeah, we're going to mine up some iron on this plot of land. And then some guy's going to be like, actually, I own that plot of land. And then maybe it'll get to the Supreme Court. Maybe I'll cover it on GovernMax. So, yeah. So let's just get started, I guess. We're going to talk
Yeah.
about some space future stuff.
Earth
Okay.
orbit. Right now,
Earth orbit.
you are on the planet Earth, unless it is the far future where you are,
And you're watching
and
this,
you're
yeah.
watching us from another location, hopefully, that we'll mention in this stream. But right
Yeah.
now, we're all living on Earth. The next step is Earth's orbit.
Yep. Yeah, we actually have already seven. Here, wait, I'll check. Last time I checked, it was 7 people in Earth orbit. We have people that live up in Earth orbit for 6 months to a year at a time. So, kind of like snowbirds, like we get that here in Florida, just people that. So
Mm-hmm.
seven people still. Um, we've got we've got Kate Rubins, Sergei Ryzhikov, Sergei Pudzverchkov, Shannon Walker, Victor Glover, Mike Hopkins, and Soichi Noguchi. So it's the same team as the one that I saw like last time I checked.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, 7 people in Earth orbit. That is quite the accomplishment, I would say. Although there's a bit of space pessimism sometimes. That's like, what have we really done since Apollo? But I mean, this is still, you gotta count your wins. Like, this is still incredible. But how might Earth orbit develop in the future? That is the question we are going to be answering in this section. Um, Man, it's so funny because Sebastian, you can attest, I was incredibly tired and like
Yes.
mopey just right before stream. But now that I'm on camera, I am just energy. It's quick pick me up
There you
of
go.
energy.
Yeah.
So I'm probably going to crash right after this stream, to be honest. But Earth orbit.
Earth orbit,
Oh, and
baby.
Sebastian made a flag. Look at
Right.
that.
Yeah. So
Beautiful.
this.
Tell us about it.
Of course. Um, the white is used to. I'm joking. So basically, this is the circles is the. I'm not sure if it's official, but if you Google
It can't be
flag,
official.
yeah, it's probably not. But
Yeah.
flag of
Who would
Earth.
officiate?
Yeah, who would? The flag of Earth. Earth doesn't really have a flag, but this design without the golden hoop through it is the most popular design for the flag of Earth. I think it's in relation to kind of the same principle as the Olympics, how each of the circles is meant to represent a different continent or something. I can see this doing
Yeah.
largely
Well,
the same.
it's supposed to be every country has at least one color of
Mm,
like that's why. So those 5 colors for the flags of each country, every country has at least one of those colors in their flag. That's the idea of the Olympics rings.
wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that is the proposed design, and for Earth's orbit, I just added a yellow, hoop that's supposed to represent an orbit going around what is supposed to represent the Earth.
Yep.
I would say it follows all the rules of vexillology. You can check out that
Yeah.
stream.
Yeah. Exactly.
And yeah, I like it. I feel like we have
I
better
like it
ones,
too.
but I do like this one.
Yeah. I find it interesting. I guess right now you could say the most official flag of Earth would just be the UN flag.
But that's probably fair.
Although that the UN does exclude like 4 countries with like 100 asterisks after them
Yeah.
because there are a lot of things, entities that are questionable in their country status. And if you, depending on what you say, you might upset different governments. But anyway, so let's start with Outposts. So this is like the current stage we are at, I would say,
Mm-hmm.
in terms of developing Earth orbit, and that is Outposts or Outpost. We have the International Space Station. That is the only one right now. It is inhabited by 7 people. Its missions are mainly just experimental science, and that is sort of what the Outpost stage is characterized by, I would say. So it's just research into living in space, as well as what sort of unique benefits and challenges this kind of environment offers. So they have done some experiments, and I imagine as more commercial developments occur, they will do more experiments about different processes that occur in space differently with low gravity. Do plants grow better? Can we make a better tomato, a better tasting tomato, a larger tomato? Can we make better tomatoes in space? That is a question that we would want to answer in the Outpost stage. Can we make better, electronics components in space? That is a question we would want. Just basic stuff like that. That is what the Outpost stage does. It is like reconnaissance a little bit. It is research it's like the vanguard research that will lead the way to eventual habitation, because not only is it research on what benefits we could get from living in space, it's also research on how humans deal with living in space. What are the consequences of increased radiation? What are the consequences of low gravity? How might you exercise? What sort of exercise regimens could help an astronaut and eventually just a person who happens to be living in space, which wouldn't really have, a title, other than American, there might come a point in the future where it's just that there's some word. We don't have that word yet. And so that sort of research is what needs to be
we should
done.
come up with a word and coin the term of a non-astronaut in space.
So they've been calling them I think there have been a few called private astronauts, I think is what they call them, where they're just, or space tourists. That's another one.
I was thinking that.
But
I bet we
what
could
about
come
when
up
they're
with some better.
inhabitants?
Yeah.
Spaceman.
Spaceman. But yeah, so you can listen to a lot of astronaut. I was gonna say testimonies, but it sounds like too grim a word.
Yeah.
You can listen to a lot of astronauts talk about their experience. I would like to plug my own father, Chris Hadfield.
Yep.
He's not my dad, but he will often talk about his experience on the ISS, which he was on for a sizable length of time. But you can also listen to any other astronauts.
Oh yeah, do any astronauts have long form podcasts?
That's a good question.
Like what we might do. That would be very. I would like to sort of just listen to some astronaut podcasts. Maybe we can recommend you guys some good astronaut podcasts. Let's see, astronaut.
Yeah, I'm trying to
stationary astronaut. This is the first one.
Ooh. It looks like there is a
Space for You
podcast called Space for You with the with the number 4.
Yeah. And the letter U.
And the letter U.
Involves casual and non-technical conversations with space professionals telling their part of the space story. Oh, so it's not just astronauts. It's also I imagine, engineers and stuff. So that's interesting.
Yeah.
And then they've got the Orbital Mechanics podcast. Let's see. Spaceflight news, discuss past, current, and future. I should listen to some of these, honestly. A Timeless Flight. A lone astronaut hopelessly lost in space logs his journey. Oh, so this is like a fiction one, I think.
Also, it looks like if you go to the official NASA site, nasa.gov, they have a section of the Johnson Space Center portion of the website called Houston, We Have a Podcast. And it looks like they have...
Oh my god.
Literal astronauts talking about what's going on. Oh, they have a
That's
planetary
great.
geologist and analytical geochemist. So yeah,
Houston,
definitely
yeah.
check these
Check
things
that out.
out.
Yeah, check some of these things out. Houston, we have a podcast. Oh wow, look at all those.
Yeah.
Oh, they've got Sergey Krikalev. I cannot pronounce these Russian names, but yeah.
Yeah.
So
So
he's on.
definitely, I would highly recommend listening to these because they can, actually testify to what it's
Yep.
like to be on the ISS. Like they're probably going to be on the ISS if anywhere, but
Yeah.
I'm sure you can also listen to some people that might have ran other missions, whether they be
Yeah,
like
there are still
supply
probably some like
missions.
Skylab veterans,
Probably, yeah.
you know,
Um,
Mir.
Maybe even from what was the last Apollo mission? I should probably know. That was our last.
Oh, well,
Yeah.
Aldrin. Aldrin's still around. Buzz Aldrin.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I guess that is
He was
fair.
Apollo 11, so the
Yeah.
first one. Um, Neil
So.
Armstrong unfortunately passed away in 2012, I believe.
Oh,
Um,
I didn't know that.
so yeah, but yeah, what was I gonna say? Oh yeah, I saw For All Mankind, this show I've talked about quite a bit
Mm-hmm.
on this live stream. I just saw the trailer for their second season, and I am very hyped.
Oh.
So, get this. I'm setting the stage here. 1983, okay? Astronauts landing on the moon with guns. All the while, Sweet Dreams Are Made of This playing over the trailer. I'm very excited.
Wow.
It's gonna be a very the trailer is very 80s, and the plot I think revolves around like the Soviets have like some sort of like they're setting up military bases in space and on the moon, and then people are debating what are the rules of engagement in space. I am so excited. I am so hyped to watch the season 2 of this show on Apple TV of all things. So I'm happy for
Very
that.
nice. Yeah.
It's gonna be cool.
Um. Yeah. Just going back to living on outposts and stuff.
Yeah.
I would say that, like you can't. There's nothing that can really speak to the level of what NASA is prepared for. And here's the thing: is that they don't do they don't get prepared through experiment necessarily. Like the first few missions that they ran, they were already prepared for so many variables. Like it's not like they're like, oh, let's run this and then we'll see how it works. Obviously, that is a small portion of their research, but again, it's a very small portion. The large part of it is, and this is why they have so many, engineers, is they sit them down and they're like, this is every possible thing. Like, have we
my
missed
gosh, that could go
anything?
wrong.
And
Yeah.
it's all theoretics, and they're like, okay, but what if this condition, this condition, this condition, this condition, and this condition happens? It's all theoretical,
Wow.
and that's why I would say NASA has a pretty high success rate.
Yeah.
And
Compared to other space agencies.
yeah, and that's largely the reason why is they sit for hours and hours and hours just thinking of every single possible thing that could happen. And then the thing is that when you get to people living on outposts in just Earth orbit or pretty much anywhere else in space, you also have to prepare people for living in space. For will a person get bored? Will this person want to do this? Like, what do we take for granted here on Earth that isn't in space? All of these
I
things.
hear a lot of astronauts talk about like the wind, like they miss the wind
They miss
after.
the wind. That's nice.
Right?
Yeah.
Like that's very poetic, but I mean it makes sense because there is no wind in space.
Yeah.
The best you'll get is a draft when a vent turns on. Like, oof.
Yeah. So that's going to be a whole nother can of worms opened
Yeah.
for how do we stop people from just losing their minds in space. I think I could do it. I think I would be so jazzed by the fact that I was
That
in
I'm in
space
space.
that
Yeah.
I could just sit in a dark room for like 18 hours a day with no wind.
Hmm.
Um,
No
but
wind. Yes.
honestly, a large part of it is going to be um, a lot of theoretical psych work. So
Mm.
I would absolutely not be surprised. In fact, I would pretty much bet on it that when access to space becomes more open, like access is increased to the general public,
Hmm.
um, uh, NASA or any other space organization is going to be looking for more psychoanalysts or
Mm.
psychiatrists
And
or
like new
therapists.
psychological conditions. That's very
Yeah.
interesting. I would say that something that's very beneficial about Earth orbit specifically is that there is easy telecommunications with the Earth.
Mm-hmm.
So the astronauts, they'll just video call their family, talk to people. I think that very much helps because I think like the majority of psychological problems in space, I would say stem from isolation.
Mm.
However, there are probably also some conditions from just the latent environment of space that, like, even if you had, 100 people, that you would still end up with some problems. And so that is and those are more underlying, because there are far more glaring psychological concerns right now that those can sort of remain hidden. And I feel like that is what would be addressed in the next stage.
Mm.
Should we segue? Should we move to that next slide? Or if you have more to say,
No,
feel free.
I was done.
Okay,
Now
cool.
we have bases.
Yeah, bases. So at this stage, I would say it's like 50 to 100 people living in a single base up in space. I guess that rhymes. Um, and once you get to that level of population, you might want to try to have a circular space station that spins to simulate artificial gravity. That is something that you could do if you had a sufficiently large ship. I think this proposal, this is Werner von Braun's space station proposal. I think he was one of the first people to propose this in like 1955. It would have to be like 4 times larger than the ISS in diameter. Otherwise, you'd actually get like dizzy because Coriolis forces would mess you up. But once you get up to a larger size, that diminishes slightly. But yeah, so bases, since they are much larger, they largely eliminate one of the big problems, which is the microgravity, because it won't wear on your bones. It won't weaken you as much. People will still have to put up with working in microgravity because there will still probably be labs and experiments and sections of space station and space base that you would want to be kept in zero gravity, because otherwise you might as well just have a house on Earth, right?
Yeah.
Um, so people are still going to have to be accustomed to, I guess, changes in gravity. However, the long-term side effects probably won't be as severe. That's one thing. Also, again, the isolation, the psychological effect of that might be reduced because there are going to be a lot more people. I think it might be interesting to look at analogs with like military submarines and like ships. If you know anything about that, I don't really know much. I hadn't thought of it until like just now, so I didn't
Mm.
really research that. But they have to, like, on a military ship, they get the wind on their face, but they have to stay on this one ship with maybe 100 people for months on end. Um, so I wonder how that affects psychology. We're gonna
I
have to take a page from that.
I remember I remember two things. And
Hmm.
I hold up three fingers. I remember that a while ago we started making memes from the future.
Yeah.
And I also remember that when we were working on this, you were talking about bases that might be named after like real life cities, like
Mm.
New Dallas or New
Yeah.
whatever. And I think that'd be hysterical because if you start getting bases named after cities, then it'll be the same thing on Earth where you have people competing to see which city is better. It'll just be which, base is better.
Yeah.
And it would be awesome to see that, how New York has its own distinct voice and So does San
Oh, that's interesting.
Francisco.
Yeah.
Will there be a space accent? You know, that might
Ooh,
be
a space
nice.
accent. That's
Space
interesting.
accent.
I bet because something with the gravity might affect that. But
Ooh.
also something interesting is that on the topic of like naming, is that I could see a lot of if you have like military-esque bases like established by the military, you could get sort of like ship names. Like you've got the USS Arizona, the USS,
Ooh, yeah.
right? You've got all these US ships. Um, but you could get like a USSS, right? Like a US space station, and then names for that. So that would be cool. I'm trying to think just about other things. So yeah, we'd have to take a page from the psychology of small crews in space. Also with bases, we're going to have to start thinking about the rules around, military anything because the 1967 Outer Space Treaty explicitly bans just weapons of war from space. There is actually a handgun on the International Space Station, but that is for the purposes of fighting off bears in case there is a bear
Space
when the crew
bears.
lands in Russia.
Space
No,
bears.
because when they come back down to Earth, it's interesting. They have survival kits because they can land anywhere, right? They can land in the middle of the woods, and part of that survival kit is a handgun, so that if there is some wild animal, they can defend themselves. But that's sort of so it's not even stuff that would be explicitly militaristic. You just need some tools, and those tools might be used for negative things. You also might begin to get space crime. Um,
Space
I
crime.
think about a year ago there was one astronaut who like was involved in like some sort of fraudulent behavior, like they were stealing their ex-wife's money or something like that. Like I don't know what they were doing. I didn't look into it,
Mm,
but it was the first space crime, right?
yeah.
Um, Also, I mean, in the 70s, I think with Skylab, you had the space pirates who went
Yes.
on strike and essentially occupied because where else are they going to go? They occupied Skylab for a period of time because they were being overworked. We talked about this a few episodes ago. So there are a lot of considerations you're going to have to start making. Once you have a 50 to 100 person base, you're going to have to start thinking about the role of military power and the role of just criminal justice. I would say the bases would largely, this would be my prediction, they would largely operate on a sort of like military type like hierarchy,
Mm.
even if they aren't explicitly militaristic, even if they aren't for warfare purposes. Um, like the best you can do is you're not going to bring a judge with you in space. You can't find a jury of peers that isn't biased when there's only 100 people on the base. Also, this is extraterritorial. You are outside of the US borders or whatever country you're from. So I could see a sort of like the criminal justice system in early space bases being just like court-martialed. You're court-martialed. You have been dishonorably discharged and must go back to Earth, things like that. I feel like that might be
I want
how
to
space
see.
bases operate.
I want to see a TV show. I don't know
Mm-hmm.
if it would be a sitcom or kind of like a mystery, but
Mm.
on a space base
Yeah.
where their hierarchy is not that of a military, but more similar to that of like a small town. So they have a space
Ah,
sheriff and a space
space
detective,
sheriff.
two space
Yes,
lawmen, and
I like that.
everything else in a small like old west town that you would
Yeah,
get.
yeah.
I would like that,
Okay.
like a space mayor. I want that
Space
show
mayor.
because
That's interesting.
it would merge the two tropes, and I think it'd be pretty nice.
That would be pretty interesting, actually. Yeah. So yeah, fascinating stuff here. But other things, I mean, you would get the beginnings of industry. The main purpose would be to establish industry, I suppose, because still 50 to 100 people isn't much of a workforce, but it's still more than it would go beyond the scope of simple like scientific experiment. I would say the space bases would still largely be experiment focused and would still be a net cost in terms of just economics. Like they wouldn't it's unlikely they would be self-sufficient, but they would probably do experiments with self-sufficiency. So you'd see a lot of hydroponics and stuff like that. But but the main purpose would be to sort of like on the frontier, or when the European powers were colonizing America, you have to set up a forward base of operations, and then you can establish sort of self-sustaining communities. I think that would be the goal of this step. So just before you're able to start, like that. So yeah, that's that. Um, Anything else?
I would definitely want to live on a space base.
Totally.
I want to see. I
I
want to
want to
see
live on a space base.
what I guess it would have to be called New Orleans, but I want to see what that looks like.
New
Space.
Orleans.
Everything sounds better when you put space in front of it. I want a
Space.
space sheriff, a space mayor, and I want there to be a band on the space base called that only play space jazz. And space jazz sounds
Space
really
jazz.
cool. But I do really want to look into the space accent because it would be
The space accent. Yeah.
cool to see. And again, this is inevitably leading to the first person born in space, which will
That's
be a
true.
whole legal
Yes.
mishmash can of worms.
It's interesting. Did you know there are 11 people who were born in Antarctica,
Wow.
which is a more exclusive club than the number of people who have been on the moon, which is 12.
Wow.
So, shout out to anyone who is born in Antarctica.
To all of our
It's unlikely
viewers
they're
born in
watching.
Antarctica.
Unlikely they're watching, and unlikely they understand because they are all from like Argentina and Chile, so they would speak Spanish. So, but maybe they have English as a second language as well. Um, I do not know. I have not researched these people. But anyway, so that's space bases. So I would say now let's move on to cities. So I think space bases will slowly transition to become cities. First you've got two of those little rings there. You've got one of those ring cities, and then there's enough funding to say, or a ring base, sorry, and then there's enough to just build another and connect it up. And now they're connected. You've got two modules, and it just instantly doubles the size of the space base. Eventually, the bases will become just sort of these long cylinders. That's the O'Neill cylinder concept, which might be interesting. I would say they're more efficient than the rings because the problem with the rings is that the larger your radius, the more tension your space base, your space structure is put under as it spins. So it's better to actually extend it out sideways because there is no additional tension from that. So you might get these long O'Neill cylinders that look like towns, and they wouldn't look exactly like this because this is before like solar panels existed. But so this is concept art, but yeah. So and you would probably just have internal artificial lighting. But yeah, it's very interesting because you would just see the typical sort of colony-esque transition from a sort of military hierarchy or just some sort of very regimented, like government planned hierarchy. I mean, it could be international too. The first space bases are probably going to be international affairs. So you start off with just something that is very heavily like top down and like it is the governments on Earth sort of deciding what goes on. But then eventually they're probably going to transition into more self-governance. And that is when you begin to get space cities. So that's just something interesting.
Yeah.
And eventually, yeah, the military hierarchy sort of would drop. People would just be citizens. There's enough of a population for a just
Yes.
proper criminal justice system.
It is once
like
the
that.
first space city exists.
Mhm.
I do think that the number of people that will want to go to space will increase like tenfold.
Yeah.
Like for you and me,
Yep.
we've always wanted to go to space.
We
And
already want to go
it
to space.
wasn't until this year, and I don't mean 2021 because it's been 17
Mhm.
days, but
Yeah, 2020.
last
year.
last
Yeah.
whatever, that I met people that did not want to go to space at all.
Interesting.
The number one,
Really?
yeah,
What were their
uh,
arguments?
the number one thing was that it would be boring because there'd be nothing to do. It wouldn't be natural. Nothing would be natural up there, and they would be pretty much alone. Like not really alone, but there'd only be a small group of them,
Hmm.
as well
Who
as
are these crazy people?
well, the thing is,
I'm just
and
kidding.
what I
But I just find it
I'll tell
funny.
you after
I just,
stream.
I know, I know. I just find it funny. They say boring, but then they say unnatural. I'm like, have you been in nature? I find it very relaxing personally, but there are not very exhilarating things going on in the natural scape, right?
Yeah, but
So,
what I mean here is
yeah,
that with cities, all of those
that's true.
arguments that I just listed off are met because
Hmm.
it's no longer boring because a it's a
Yep.
city, and if you're bored in a city, you're doing something wrong.
Yeah.
Two, you can actually get natural stuff up on a city, like in the concept right there. Those would be actual trees, I guess,
Yeah, exactly.
and there could
The
be
animals, you would establish an ecosystem.
yeah, hydroponics could
Outdoors, you would
definitely
get a
work.
wind.
Yeah,
Minor winds, mind
minor
you.
wins, but
But
that would still make
yeah.
the astronauts happy.
Yeah, exactly.
It wouldn't be I forget what you wouldn't be alone because there would be it's a city. I mean, how many
Mm.
people are in a city? It'd probably be scaled down somewhat
Yep.
until we actually reach that level. But that is far in the future. More of a like there could literally be someone on your base or your city that you don't know. Like
Yeah.
on a base
That would be an interesting point.
like 150 people, you're probably not gonna know each and every one of them, but
Hmm.
you would be able to like if a new
Yeah,
person was
150.
added, like you would be able to know,
Yeah,
hey,
you
that
know,
person
hey, that's
wasn't there
they're
before.
an imposter. Yeah.
Yeah, there's an imposter among us. But
Yeah.
with a city, there will be people that you have not
Yeah.
seen, you do not know, and that can honestly have kind of a different experience than you
Yep.
based on their own interest. Because,
Yeah.
again, with all the psychological work that is inevitably going to go into these things, there's going to be, an arcade for the people that
Yeah.
want to play games.
Yeah,
There's going to be
exactly.
a hockey rink for
Mm.
Canadians. There's going to be anything that you want to suit
Yeah.
people's individual interests. So you're going to get people in these cities in
Yep.
space that have different experiences, like
I would say
entirely.
this would also probably this is also going to like a slow transition. You don't just go from bases to like
Yeah.
New York City-esque things in one day. So you would have a large, I think, small town period. That's I would umbrella that under city when I say city, um, just in terms of space. And just sort of like what you see in this picture, I find that very idyllic because there is going to be a period of time where they want to push for self-sufficiency, because it is very expensive to ship up food and water from Earth. Thankfully, water is largely conserved, so it's mostly just food and then CO2 scrubbers. Um, but once you start getting all this space, you're going to have very rural communities because you want to have that local source of food. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Also, uh, with the whole natural aspect, there probably won't be these windows here. As I said, this is before solar panels. So people might object to the fact that like there is no real sky. That might be the next sort of goalpost that people are complaining about. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
They'll be like, oh, it's just more ground. That's not natural. Um, but honestly, I really like this design, even though it's outdated, even though it would never happen. Because can you imagine? Wouldn't you love to just walk out onto the glass? Because remember, this thing is like 8 kilometers in circumference or something. So each section of glass is like,
That
about a
would scare the
mile.
hell out of me. I'm not
I do
one
not exactly. That's
I'm
the
not
point.
one for height. Like
That's the
I'm not
point.
one to be afraid of
Yeah,
heights, but to just if it's 8 kilometers,
infinite height.
then
Because you
yeah,
are because it's 8 kilometers around, which means that if you walked
if
out
you
into the
walk,
center of one of these glass panels, I mean, it would all be stable, but the Earth, non-transparent ground, would be half a mile away from you in either direction. You would be amidst in just the sea of just glass. Like I just find that
oh,
so cool.
it's
I would
cool.
really
It's
want to do that.
terrifying, but it is cool.
I would want to just.
I
Although
could
in this thing,
no.
yeah,
Oh, are you ready? You ready for
yeah, I'm
this?
ready.
This is a vision into the future that I just
Yeah,
got. Teenagers, being rambunctious as they
yep,
are, live in a
rambunctious.
space city, and they're like, these two teens, are like bored, and they're like, hey, I got an idea. why don't we go out to the glass realm? You know, because that's what they call it.
Hmm.
They're like, let's
The
go at the
glass.
glass lands. Like, why don't we go out
Yeah.
to the glass lands? And
Hmm.
they're like, okay, sure. And so, you know, one night in quotes, they
Mm.
sneak out
Yes.
and they take their car and they drive out onto the glass,
Oh,
and they set up a picnic blanket, and instead of looking up at the stars, they
they
look
look
down
down
at
at
the
the stars.
stars.
Exactly. That's just a very interesting
And that's
aspect
just a
here.
vibe, man, with
Yep.
like they play music and they're just looking out at the galaxy. When
Exactly.
this I hope this inevitably does happen, um remember me.
Remember me. Yeah, exactly. You'll probably get a few aesthetic cities, and this is the thing. At
Yeah,
first, it's
yeah.
largely going to be like, what is it? Form follows function. Just because we are in space, this is a hostile environment. You know, this is no time for fun and games and glass floors.
Mhm.
But eventually, someone might be like, there are a million people living in space. Might 1,000 of them want a city with a glass floor section?
Yeah, right
You
there.
know, and that is when you get beautiful pieces like this that you are seeing now,
Very
the
nice.
classic O'Neill cylinder. But
Yes.
um, but yeah, so the development of cities is just going to be very interesting. It's just I mean, I would look if you are interested in like how this might unfold. I would just look into like the American frontier, essentially. Um,
Mhm.
just the development of small towns from just like a single like outpost, a cabin into just like major cities that are like major cities today. It's just very fascinating. It's largely due to the railroad, actually. This is fascinating. I've been in my U.S. history class. Is that you'd have some like town of 100 people,
Mhm.
right? The railroad companies would just give them a bus stop or a train stop. Sorry, they'd give them a train station, and then like over the course of 5 years, the city would like get like 100 times greater in size. People would just be like, "Oh, this is cool." And so yeah, so it's very interesting what might happen on a frontier like this. I mean, space they say is the final frontier. So yeah, this is just very entertaining, very interesting, very exciting. Um, but yeah, something just of note, I guess, to wrap up this little slide here is that while we say cities, I think there are either going to need there's either okay when you have cities, you're either going to need large sections of the space station be devoted to farmland, or you're going to need to have separate space stations that are just entirely devoted to farmland. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Because once you are in space, it is actually relatively cheap to transfer stuff from space station to space station. Like that is fairly low cost. However, to transmit stuff or transfer stuff from ground to space or space to ground, very, very expensive. So there is going to be a focus on self sufficiency as soon as possible. That would be my key takeaway here. Um, Imagine the fields of wheat
Hmm.
on the O'Neill cylinder.
Yeah.
I just love this very idyllic type of stuff.
Yeah, dude, it's honestly such an aesthetic, and it'd be
I want to make this all
fantastic.
like in VR chat or something, like some VR platform. I
Ooh.
want to make like a VR landscape of just possible future stuff. Um, of course, I don't really have a headset or VR chat. My computer, you can do VR chat on your computer, but not if
Yes,
it's a
yes,
Mac.
yes.
So
Oh.
I unfortunately cannot. Um, However, I'm pretty sure there are other programs. That's something that actually makes me excited. Like that is increasing in popularity as people are stuck at home. There is going to be more development of virtual spaces.
Yeah.
Very wonderful. I love virtual spaces. Double thumbs up. Very excited for that. Virtual spaces are cool. Can you imagine a virtual office? We've talked about this before. Let's go to the next slide. Let's go to the next slide.
Yeah, so cities, just final thing. Um, yeah, honestly, I feel like this would be the step to more people wanting to go into space.
Yeah, that's very true. Like fortunes will be made. Like how
Yeah.
in the frontier times there was a lot of like go out west and you'll be rich. You can make your fortune out west. I feel like that will be a large thing with this sort of space frontier because there are a lot of untapped resources in space. That's just the key takeaway, I would say. But yeah, so then finally, we have hubs.
Hubs.
So hubs, these are just essentially airports or spaceports. Um, and Earth orbit is a useful location for this because I would say it's like the vast majority of fuel in a rocket launch is spent just getting up to low Earth orbit, which is only a few hundred miles above the surface, right?
Mm.
So, but if you want your mission to go to Mars, you need to carry that plus all the fuel it takes to get to Mars, plus a ton of additional fuel that it takes to carry that additional fuel as like this recursive sort of loop. So to make space travel more efficient, we are likely going to build hubs. This is one by the Gateway Foundation. And the hub stage is sort of outside of this because the hub stage can sort of happen at any time, really. You know what I'm saying? Like you can have bases that are dedicated hubs, but then you can also have cities that are dedicated hubs. Like, as I mentioned before in another episode, Atlanta, because I am a Delta loyalist.
Oh, horrible.
So,
Horrible.
so Atlanta, I've, you know, I would, I've probably been in Atlanta like half a dozen times. I would have, in an alternate reality where Atlanta is not a hub for Delta, or in an alternate reality where I do not use Delta, I would have never gone to Atlanta.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There's no reason outside of just hub travel for me to have gone to Atlanta, right?
Yeah.
However, there is actually a lot of industry in Atlanta, like Amazon and a ton of places are headquartered in Atlanta. But my point here is that back with the, as I said in the last slide about the transcontinental railroad, and towns would just explode after just a train station is built, right? Hubs can make cities, you know? That's what I'd say. Being a useful hub, being a useful port, that makes or breaks a city. In space, this becomes a little more vague because location is not definite in space. You're in constant motion. Um, but there are sets of locations that will give some cities an edge, and some cities will become very important as hubs. So that's what I would say. You'll probably get, I would say, a low Earth hub, maybe like a mid Earth hub, geostationary hub, stuff like that to just make space travel more efficient. And it'll be a step by step process to get out of the Earth gravity well, essentially. But yeah, so you can see stuff like that in the future. So that's hubs. Do you have anything to say about that?
Um. Yeah. Again, it's just I. Hey, I love space. I want to go to space. Whatever can help me get around space easier, I welcome.
Exactly.
So, there you go.
Hubs can also be useful for resource transportation in space. That's another thing. Like all the metal from space might get brought into a hub to produce, X product that uses metal. Like that's another sort of trend in like late 1800s, early 1900s America. Basically, this whole I think there are massive parallels between like 1870 to 1910 America and possible futures in space. I think there's a lot of parallels there. Of course, we might want to avoid some of the negative parallels, like industrial revolution type stuff.
Yeah.
But I think we have evolved past that largely.
Hopefully.
We have largely evolved past that, at least in terms of what citizens in developed nations will tolerate. People will not tolerate low safety standards. But yeah, so those are problems, but someone else will have to sort them out, right?
Yeah.
I won't be sorting them out. Someone else is going to do it. So I'm just going to talk about it. So let's move on to the next place.
All right. I think it's capturing cursor, by the way. I didn't call it out.
Oh, that's
yep,
fine.
it is capturing cursor. So, boo on you, OBS.
Luna.
Luna.
The moon. And we call it Luna here because, and we're going to do that largely throughout this season, because you cannot just call it the moon. If you live on Mars and you say to someone, the moon, they're going to have a lot of questions to ask you. First of all, they're going to say, which one, Phobos or Deimos? But second of all, if you're throwing Luna, the Earth's moon, into the mix, that just confuses things much further. You know, people would not want to have to say the moon. Okay, it's too vague. So you got to specify Luna. Um,
Yeah, honestly, the moon is
yeah,
just outdated. Like
it's an
I
outdated term.
get I get it. I get why they went with it. They were like,
Yep.
"Hey, that's a moon.
Yeah, we
Let's
didn't. It
call it the
wasn't a
moon."
category yet. That's all
Yeah.
it was. And then we found more things like it. The only scenario in which I see the phrase "the moon surviving" is because Earth is fairly rare in that it only has one moon. So everywhere else, you would have to specify which moon it is. So like you'd have to say on Mars, you'd have to be like Phobos, Deimos. On Jupiter, you'd have to be like Io, Europa, Ganymede. So if you are on another planet and you say the moon, there's a slight chance that that sort of cultural relic will survive because people will say, "Oh, he's obviously referring to the Earth's moon because a moon here, you would have to specify which one." But I don't like that. It is imprecise. It's trashy. I prefer Luna. It's better. At least in like legal documents, they'll have to specify in legal documents. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Even if the moon persists in day-to-day language, you can't use that for legal documents because, again, that would lead to problems, contract problems, Supreme Court cases, maybe even, you know?
Hmm.
So, stuff like that. First, let's look at the moon's flag that I made.
Very
Uh,
nice.
yeah,
That is great.
thank you. Yeah, so you've got the gray is for the ground, obviously, and then the black is for the dark sky. But then the big blue in the center is representing both the Earth, which is very prominent in the moon's sky, but it could also be the water resources at the moon's pole. So that's their
What do you think
logo,
the
their
moon
flag.
accent will turn into?
The moon accent. Well, here's the thing, actually, and I would say space accents in general. Um, I'm I I'm not sure how physiology in low gravity will affect things, but
Mm.
I would predict that it would largely just be international. It would be a sort of international like accent, because right now I bet a lot of the astronauts that speak English are developing somewhat of a Russian accent because they're around Russians, right? And space is largely going to be an international affair. And this is something happening with the internet too, I would argue, is that accents are sort of diminishing in intensity. Because when you're online, if you are online, like from when you are very young, hearing a wide variety of accents, the specific accent of your location isn't going to be as pronounced. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, also, just because it's space, people are going to be hailing from every part of the globe. There's not just going to be like a ton of people from Tennessee all decide to make their own space station, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, eventually you'll probably get that, but at first, it's going to be a very international thing. So, I would say you'll get a sort of homogenous space accent, and just a sort of homogenous accent for all of humanity in the future, I would say. There's a sort of merging, homogeneity occurring. That would be
Mm-hmm.
my estimate, my prediction. So yeah, let's start with Outposts.
Moon outposts,
Moon
baby.
Outposts. So this is similar to the ISS. We do not have moon outposts yet. So this would be like, a small thing that's like a few rooms that could handle like, 3 to 7
So
people. Yeah.
with all that we've talked about so far, correct me if
Yep.
I'm wrong. I would say that the order of it happening would be, we already are at Earth orbit outpost with
Yeah.
the one. I would say that I could see us getting maybe another one question mark,
Hmm. In
and
the
then
2020s.
in the 2020s, and then there would be a lunar outpost would be the next step, and then
That's
it would
interesting.
go to the other outposts that we're talking about. Or actually,
Yeah.
I might even posit that the lunar outposts might actually grow faster than the orbital outposts,
Hmm.
just because there's
More
like
available.
natural gravity, and you can
Yeah.
stand, and it's easier to
Well, yeah.
construct stuff.
Yeah, I would say it's actually gravity would probably be better and easier in orbit, just
Mm.
ironically, because since there is no gravity whatsoever, the only gravity you have to worry about is the introduced spin gravity. But with an outpost on the moon, you're getting 1/6 gravity. But if you try to set up a spin situation, it won't really work well. You know what I mean? You'll have to worry
So
about both things.
would
Um,
the
yeah.
um
But I agree that the moon would grow faster because
yeah.
they have materials right there. So it's easier to grow. Whereas in space, you would have to essentially lug asteroids in from extant orbits and then build using them, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, where are you going to ask?
I was just gonna say, what would your order be of things
My
that?
order. So this is interesting. NASA, in their Artemis mission, they proposed the construction of a deep space gateway, which is essentially a moon orbit base that would permanently be in moon orbit, and it would be able to house up to 3 people. So, sort of like a Skylab, essentially. It would be smaller than the ISS. So, a Skylab in moon orbit. And I think that is a very good idea if you want to play it just especially safe and worry about infrastructure primarily. Um, and this is interesting because a lot of planets you might want to sort of go backwards because on Earth, obviously we established infrastructure on Earth, then established infrastructure in Earth orbit. But
Mm.
on other planets, we might want to start by establishing infrastructure in Earth or in planet orbit or moon orbit, and then go onto the planet. You know what I'm saying? Um, some benefits of that is that on the moon, so when you're on the ISS, right, you are only 400 miles above the Earth. If there is a catastrophic problem, you can simply enter your escape vehicle and just drop away and fall back into the Earth. Let gravity take its course. Just a bit of fuel to deorbit yourself, and then you're safe, right?
Mm-hmm.
On the moon, that is difficult. You actually have to launch up from the moon. You know what I mean? If there is something catastrophic that occurs, you might get like stranded on the moon, and that would be very bad. So having a deep space gateway, a space station in orbit of the moon, would minimize that risk because it would give you a sort of permanent base of operations in the sky so that if your outpost on the ground fails, at least you don't have to get all the way back to Earth, At least as long as you have enough fuel to, rocket up a few hundred miles, you can get back to safety. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, but outposts will occur, I think, in the early 2030s, late 2020s too. But I forgot what date we said. We made a prediction date, but
Oh, I
uh,
wonder if I
there's
have my post-it
your
notes.
paper. Yeah,
Yeah.
we can reference back. But the
Oh,
point is that
is that it? Hold on. Nope, that's the date for my ACT test.
wonderful.
I was like, that is a really early prediction
Yeah.
for.
When are you taking the ACT? What month?
It is in. Actually, no, that's my class. That's my class for the
Oh, okay.
ACT,
Okay.
which is in February. February
Nice.
6th.
Fun. Yeah, I'm gonna take the SAT in March again.
Yeah, me too.
Um, so yeah. Let's see. Anyway, outposts on the moon. So the purpose of an outpost on the moon, again, it will be for research because we have done a lot of research we have 20 years of research of the effects of zero gravity on different processes and the human anatomy.
Mm-hmm.
But we have no research on, 1.7 meters per second on the human anatomy and various processes. And you can't just assume that it'll be like somewhere in the middle. You know what I mean? There could be vast and interesting differences. It's hard to extrapolate from just 2 data points. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there will be a very definite purpose of the outposts on the moon to say, like, what are the responses of human physiology? What are the responses of human psychology? And that sort of thing. The good thing about an outpost on the moon is that you are 1 light second away from the Earth, approximately, which means that you can still have fairly decent telecommunications with Earth. There won't be too much of a delay, so you can still face chat with people on Earth and it's fine. This will become a bit of a problem once we get to our next place, but so isolation isn't going to be as severe. It'll be just as severe as isolation is in Earth orbit. And of course, it gets better as you add more people. So yeah, that's Outposts. I don't have much more to say. Shall we go to bases?
We shall. Again, I'm looking for good names for lunar outposts. I want these to be named. Actually, we should probably wait until the cities or the bases for that.
Lunar bases.
I want these names to be fantastic because they're. Don't get me wrong. Do not get me. Let me be clear.
Let me be clear.
Don't get it twisted. I like the names of certain cities. I think we could have done better.
I think we could. Yeah, that's fair.
Cincinnati.
Well, this outpost specifically.
Really? Cincinnati.
I think actually a lot of cities are named after like Native American tribes in America, at least. A lot of states as well.
Well, great. Now I look like a dick. Thanks.
No, it's fine. I mean, it doesn't really. I'll admit, it doesn't really fit like with English. It's a different language, so I understand. Like the spelling is probably like for any European trying to learn, any British person, who knows English very well, trying to learn city and state names in the U.S. are like, what is this? Why is it spelled like this?
Yeah.
But I would make the prediction that a lot of the naming for stuff on the moon is just going to be based on the geological features that are already named, and those names come from the names of just scientists. So English, German, French, Italian scientists, just European scientists. That's probably the names you're going to get. You could also get tribute names to Apollo astronauts, I could see. This outpost particularly is from the show, the aforementioned For All Mankind, and it is called Jamestown. What do you think of that name? Because it's the first, sort of like how Jamestown was the first colony in America.
I don't know. There were some sus happenings at Jamestown.
There were some. That's the Croatoan place, right?
No.
The one where they all died.
That was Roanoke.
Oh, that was Roanoke. You're right. Yeah.
Jamestown was. They did not bring enough food, so they all just sat in the house waiting for one of them to fall over so they could eat.
Oh no, was there cannibalism?
There was mass cannibalism at Jamestown.
Oh jeez, that's rough. Yeah. Well, anyway, bases. So moon bases. This is where you begin to use resources on the moon. Scientists have theorized that, like, using composition of the moon's soil, they've been working on like how to make cement. We have some pretty good theories right now. Some engineers in whatever the appropriate field is have been working on processes to make cement out of what they assume moon dust to be like. And so they have some pretty good ideas, so we can make cement for construction. That is very useful, don't you think? But yeah, you're going to need some biodomes, especially. The farther we get from Earth, the quicker self-sufficiency needs to develop. So self-sufficiency will likely have to develop during the base stage here instead of as you approach this, the city stage for the last one. So you're going to get, biodomes, hydroponics, stuff like that. There's going to be a lot of space dedicated to food production. I think it's like on Earth, it takes 1 acre of land to feed one person. That's what I've heard as an estimate.
Okay.
So just think about one acre of farming land.
To feed one person for their entire life, to sustain.
Well, just it's sort of like. Yeah. The yield of that field over the course of 1 year is the amount of food they need in 1 year, essentially.
Yeah.
However, we have very diversified diets as humans because it's not just simply, oh yes, this 1 acre of wheat is my sole source of food. It's like, fractions from all over the globe, because we have a very good shipping system. But on the moon, if you don't bring tomatoes, you can't have any pizza.
Oh, that is a fantastic quote.
Thank you.
That is a great quote. Because, firstly,
Yeah.
it is. I feel like that could be applied to many situations.
Yeah,
It means
definitely.
you need to be prepared and you need
You
to
have to be prepared.
think
Yeah.
about what you're going to need in the future. But it also reinstates the. I would call it a little known fact that the moon is made out of cheese, as evidenced
Yeah.
through Walter and Gromit. If you ever watched that comic,
Yep.
whatever the hell you call it,
Claymation.
cartoon, yeah, the claymation
Yeah.
cartoon, dude, I watched that so much when I was a kid. It's weird because I'm not
Grommet.
like I think it was meant for a British audience, right?
Yeah.
I watched it like
It's a
all
classic.
the time. It's a classic.
Um,
Dude, I can't even remember the plot of any of their movies, any of their
yeah.
TV. I
Either.
remember there was like an evil penguin. That's what I remember.
Okay.
But um I just remember Wallace's voice going cheese as
Oh,
he
yes.
proceeds to eat the
Yeah, I
moon.
remember.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, so also in this image, you see a like crane building a third biodome for
Mm.
like plants. Just that's very cool. Lots of active construction is what you'll see on these bases. Again, preparing humanity for more people. It's going to be a big priority. Just build more agriculture because agriculture will be the limiting factor here in terms of uh, bringing more people. You know,
Mm.
you can't bring a fourth person to your moon base until you have enough food to support four people. Um, and also, you're going to want a lot of redundancies on the space bases and cities. The key focus, I would say, is escape pods, escape vehicles that can safely bring you back down to Earth. But on the moon, you do not have that option, as I said. So you really have to focus on redundancy. So even if you have, a space base that supports 12 people, you're going to want enough equipment to support 24 people in case half of it breaks.
Mm.
You as you said earlier about NASA's preparedness, you really want to have a lot of redundancies. That is going to be very important on the moon and just everywhere as we branch out. But yeah, so as these bases expand, they will slowly turn into cities.
Yeah.
And again, the same stuff I was saying earlier about military hierarchy, just how societies develop is probably going to be pretty similar. So we'll end up going through each section faster than the last in this live stream because
Mm.
we've covered it already. So again, all the same societal stuff I said before holds here, but let's just focus on the specific environment of the moon for the development of bases into cities, right? So this is interesting. Something you might want to do if we go into the cities slide is focus on craters and lava tubes. The moon has a lot of natural geology that I think is useful just for building.
Just
You know,
a quick sidebar.
yeah,
Is the Earth okay in that
I don't
picture?
think so.
It's not looking
I
too great.
I don't. It's not looking too hot, or it's looking very hot.
That tiny blue dot is looking awfully red.
It does not look good for the Earth in this picture. I just picked this picture and I was like, oh wait a minute.
That
But
is quite a telling prediction,
yeah,
I'd say.
yeah. Let's just ignore that. Um,
Ignore it.
ignore it. So, uh, there's a lot of good geology on the moon because there's a problem without an atmosphere on the moon. Micrometeorites will just randomly vibe check you, and there's nothing you can do about it.
Mm.
But what you can do is live in a lava tube, which they grow very large on the moon because of the lower gravity, or you could sort of dome a crater. That's a pretty good idea. Because if you have, oh, and again, that's why you might want to as well on your habitats, just pile like meters of moon dust on top. Um, Like that's a likely strategy for early moon bases, is to just pile a ton of dust on top of just a ton of regolith on top of your dome, so that any micrometeorites that strike will be just striking unessential dirt, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So that's a good tactic. Also, is that, yeah, you might want to live under sort of non-transparent domes, sadly, because the day-night cycle on the moon is 2 weeks long. So it's like, do we really need to have a clear view of the sky if the sun's gonna, like, if it's, if the sun's gonna be up for 2 weeks straight? That would be more of a nuisance, I would say. But maybe you could have some like blinds, right? And just pull the blinds whenever you want it to be nighttime. But then you have a problem of the 2 weeks of night with no day. What do you do then? All these questions will have to be sorted out. But I could see just the psychological value of having an open sky. I think that cannot be understated, So there's going to be strong desires to have glass domes like that. And yeah, so that's cities on the moon. Do you have any commentary here?
I want to see some good names about this.
Yeah.
From this.
In my books, I just named them all based on the craters they were inside of or near.
Yeah,
except the one on the North Pole. The one on the North Pole they just called New Armstrong.
Nice.
Or Neil Armstrong. Also, but yeah, like the biggest city in the southern hemisphere of the moon was in the crater Tycho, and it was simply called Tycho. I like that crater because it's named after Tycho.
Bruh.
Bruh.
Tycho. Bruh.
Tycho, bruh. If that is how his name is pronounced. Tycho. Sir Tycho. So I like that crater.
And that's probably the most realistic thing that's gonna happen, is that it's just named after where it is.
Mm-hmm. There's a crater called Plato. That's gonna be cool. Imagine I live in Plato. Greek Plato.
Yeah, I know.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure for the audience.
For the audience.
Lots of good crater names, I would say. I would say we already have a lot of good crater names on the moon.
Ooh.
That's my hypothesis. There are already a lot of good crater names, so I think we're going to get a lot of good city names on the moon. It's really just named after famous people, so that's what you're going to get.
Aristoteles, Copernicus, Humboldt, Lagrange.
Something very interesting, if you look at the craters on Mercury, they are all named after famous artists.
Yeah, I noticed that during my Mercury video.
Yeah.
Craters on Mercury.
So you'll get nice names like that. I think
yeah, this is nice. Oh my god, there's so many. Yeah, Copeland. Here. Yeah, a lot of composers as well. I can't remember if that was on Mercury or the moon. Here
I think that's on Mercury.
Mercury. Rachmaninoff is on Mercury, which is honestly the biggest flex. Imagine writing music so good that
they put your name on Mercury.
They put your name on another planet. Your music is literally out of this world. Tolkien has a crater on Mercury.
Oh, that's cool.
That's awesome.
Maybe I can get a crater on Mercury.
Yeah.
Just a small one. That'd be cool. Anyway,
Wagner,
so
after Richard Wagner.
Yep, composer.
Yep.
Yeah.
So is that after Arnim Zola? No. Emile Zola. Arnim Zola is the guy from Marvel.
Yep.
But yeah, so there you go.
Yeah, shall we go to hubs?
We shall.
Now. So I think the moon and just Earth orbit are going to have some competition over who has the best hub cities. So things going in favor of Earth orbit. You've got no gravity well whatsoever, especially the higher up you go. So there are probably going to be hubs at like the Lagrange points. In my books, I have 2 hubs at the Lagrange points of Earth, Laika 1 and Laika 2 after the first space doggo. And so they don't have to deal with a gravity well, so that is very useful. And the moon has a very small gravity well. However, it still has a gravity well. So you will have to physically plunge down and then get back up, and that takes energy. However, something the moon has that orbit doesn't have is resources.
Mm-hmm.
You can actually use water to create rocket fuel. If you, through the process of electrolysis, by removing the hydrogen from the oxygen, you can, fill two fuel tanks with hydrogen and oxygen, and then, recombine them, and that creates an explosive chemical reaction that could be used for fueling rockets. So the moon has on-site resources, but it is also a little bit trickier to get to with its gravity well. So those are the trade-offs. So they will compete. So you might get hub cities on the moon, just as I said for hub cities. Hub cities can make cities. If they have a good location, you could probably get I wonder what spot on the moon has the best location for a hub. I would guess maybe on top of the tallest mountain on the moon might be a good idea, because you can essentially yoink something right out of orbit. Another possibility is the mare. The mares on the moon are very flat compared to the rest because the surface is younger because of more recent volcanism. And when I say younger, that's still like hundreds of millions of years, but it makes it flatter, which might be useful for like maglev space train type ideas like we talked about in a previous episode. So there's going to be a lot of competition between hubs on the moon and hubs in Earth orbit. It might ultimately just come down to who has the better service, right? Service with a smile. Who does it better? One, on the moon, they'll offer you free snacks, but Earth orbit, they're more likely to upgrade you for free. So who knows? Which it'll be a competition. Competition will be fierce. So yeah.
That it will. Yeah. Again, I want to get to places faster. As the news speeds up, you need information faster, which is why you can check out 128 Seconds now, an official sponsor of the Lunar Hub.
An official sponsor, the Lunar Hub. Yes, the hub cities. So yeah, that's the moon. Now it's time for Mars.
We know him. We love him. It's accurate to call it him because it's named after the
Ares.
Yep, Ares, the Roman god of war is named Mars. The Greek god is Ares. You've seen The Martian. I've seen The Martian. Max has seen The Martian.
I've also read the book.
I read the. I think that might be one of my most read books. I think I've read it about 6 times.
Wow, nice job. It's a great book.
It's a really great book.
It's so cool because it's a great movie, but it's also an even greater book. That's like how I feel with Jurassic Park as well. Like a lot of these like books made into movies that you'll see, like the movie is of poor quality, but the book was of good quality. Mm-hmm. However, these pairs, they're both incredibly great. Just because it's such a great, like, prolific book to begin with, that it's hard to mess up a movie of it,
When I heard that they were making a movie, out of it, I was like, oh, that's nice. Because when did the Martian? Yeah, it came out in 2015. I'd been reading it through 2013. Wow. So I felt
such a long time ago.
Yeah, honestly.
2015. Jesus. Yeah, I probably watched that movie in 2015. Huh.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I saw
how time slips away from us.
Time moves at 1 second per second. It is the most benign yet the most cursed thing ever, honestly. It's both a blessing and a curse. That time moves at 1 second per second.
Yes. Very interesting. But anyway, Mars. Let's look at the Mars flag.
Melodrama aside.
Yeah.
I like it. Flag. I like it.
Yeah. So the red is for Mars. The blue and green is for their desires to terraform Mars, and the A is representing Ares, god of war, and the two crescent moons are for the two moons of Mars, Phobos and Deimos.
And just as a reference, we're on Mars now because we're
Yeah.
going pretty much in order of where we're going to go. So we start in Earth's
Yeah.
orbit, then we go to the moon, and then Mars
Yeah.
is the next step, and then
yeah, this is vaguely
the next
chronological,
one. Yeah.
I guess you could say. Loosely chronological.
What do you think the
So,
Martian accent will sound like? I think it's going to be rough. I think it's going to match the terrain. I think it's going to be somewhat similar to German because Germany's a cold place, as they're cold people. I think that Mars will be much of the same. I'm not. It's not rude. It's just
they're all asleep. So
yeah, exactly. But say I that's not a diss against them. It's just
yeah.
You know,
No, I'm just joking.
It's just a way to be. And I think that Martians will be that. People will be in there, not to be an advocate of space racism, but I believe that people will be sitting in their class and they'll be like whispering to each other, "Did you hear we're getting a transfer student? He's apparently a Martian." And they're like, "A Martian? Oh my god, I've heard so many weird things about him." It's like, yeah, is it true that that they get angry when they see the color red? And they have all these stereotypes and rumors about them.
And then the Martian, and he's just like barely able to stand because Earth gravity is too much.
Yeah.
He's just like, oh my god. I could see the Martian accent being very gravelly from damage to the vocal cords due to the sheer amount of dust and fines on Mars. There is so much dust.
I could see it being like a New Jersey accent because the New Jersey accent is just a New York accent, but you've been smoking for 30 years. So
I kind of like that, like a smoker type voice might develop.
I'm from
on
Mars. That's all you gotta know about me.
Because, as I said, there's a lot of dust. It'll be hard to keep out that dust on Mars. There are actually some interesting designs of spacesuits for Mars where, like, the spacesuit is, like, built into the exterior of the, like, base, right? And so you just have a hole in your wall, essentially, that connects to the spacesuit. You climb into the spacesuit, close the back of it, and then just detach from the wall, right? And then when you're done walking around, you go back, hook up to the wall, and then get out of the spacesuit. So that the spacesuit never actually enters the building. Because if that were to occur, you would get a lot of dust everywhere, and that would not be fun. So let's start with Outposts. So that's an idea you might have on Outposts, that space station thing. But so the Outposts. Martian Outposts, I think of all the outposts are going to be particularly desolate. You know what I mean? They're going to be. It's going to be quite challenging because Mars is at, depending on the time of year, it is anywhere from like 4 to 24 light minutes away from Earth, which means that you cannot hold a successful Zoom call. You will say something, you'll say hi, and then sit there for 4 to 24 minutes, and then the other person will receive that hi, and they'll respond, hello, and then another 4 to 24 minutes later, you'll receive that hello, which will be you cannot video call under such conditions. So more realistically, people would probably send video messages to each other. I could see that becoming more popular as we expand into the solar system, instead of video chat, to have video messages. Because people still have that desire for human contact, It's not fun to just text anymore. You lose a lot of communication through text, and you might feel like you're not close to a person anymore if you can only text them. So people on Mars might want to, record a 5-minute video of themselves, like a letter, sort of, send it up to Earth. People on Earth receive it, and they do the same, Mm-hmm. So that might be a new thing. Video messages aren't a thing, you know what I mean? We do receive, phone, what are they called? Voicemail or whatever. Voice messages, voicemail.
Whatever.
I'm too young to understand. Voicemail that even on older phones, you would have voicemail, and on new phones, you also have voicemail. Um, but it's interesting because you don't get like, if you FaceTime someone and they don't pick up, it just sort of hangs up. I think it would be interesting in the near future. You might see them add an option for FaceTime where if they don't pick up, you leave a video message. Um, yeah, mark my words, video messages will become more popular in the future. That is a prediction I say. So, so yeah, life on Mars, there's going to be a lot of isolation. The people on Mars are really going to have to rely on each other and for their own sanity, but Mars is very interesting. It has a very interesting like geology, much more interesting than the moon, I would say. There's a lot more variation in Martian geology. So, a lot more recent volcanism, a lot of different landscapes. So I think Mars will be fun. I think it'll be fun. It'll be very yeehaw.
Yeah.
It's just like cold Texas. That's Mars.
Cold Texas. maybe it'll be the Texas accent, but with the gravel of of the dirt. So he's like,
exactly.
Reach for the sky. Just horrible.
Yep.
Just unpleasant.
Unpleasant.
But we will see.
But yeah, so that's Mars, outposts. So let's develop into bases. So Mars bases. Again, the Mars outposts too are going to need to be self-sufficient. It's like you got to be self-sufficient from the start, or you can't have permanent habitation. A Mars mission will likely come with like a year of food, but you can't live on a year of food for more than a year. So if you want to stay for more than a year, you have to set up agriculture. So agriculture. That is a very big limiting factor for growth. As I said with the moon, I cannot stress the importance enough of agriculture. Something good about Mars, though, that will help the construction and expansion of bases is that Mars, I would say, has better resources than the moon. The atmosphere is filled with carbon dioxide, which you can use for your plants, help your plants grow, and then the plants will turn that carbon dioxide into oxygen for the humans. You can also get water from the ground for your plants and your humans. It's a pretty useful place. It's like a failed Earth. So it's very nice Mars. Mars is lovely, I would say. Mars is lovely this time of year. I would say it's a very nice place. Although I am partial to Venus myself. I think it's smarter to go to Venus first. I do understand the appeal of Mars, but something you'll have to worry about on bases is, again, the effects of gravity. We'll likely have moon bases, so that third data point will help us predict and understand what we might expect from Mars. But, unique, different, interesting challenges will present themselves, and we're hard-pressed to predict those. It's hard to predict those. But, it's interesting. I have actually sort of under-researched Mars, I would say, in my writings. I don't have a book that takes place on Mars. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It's my first book takes place on the moon. The next one takes place around. I mean, it starts on Venus, it goes to the asteroid belt, so it's just a lot of asteroid hopping. But they do briefly visit Mars, but you don't get to explore Mars as much as A Truly Dead Rock was really an exploration of the moon. A Bottled Up Flame is more about Venus, I would say, because there's a large section of the book that is back on Venus. And so then the third book is just sort of like you've got a lot of Dyson sphere stuff in the third book, and then they visit Venus and Earth as well. But Mars, very scant appearances of Mars in my books. I sort of feel bad, but I don't really feel bad because Mars is overcovered, I would say. There's a lot of sci-fi books that do Mars. You know what I mean?
That's fair.
Like Mars is the setting. I think Mars has been done, quite thoroughly. I will do Mars in my books eventually because how could you not? It's just a fun place. But I haven't thought about Mars as much as I've thought about other places in the solar system. You know what I mean?
He's gonna do Mars.
I'm gonna do Mars eventually. But so yeah, it's an interesting place. Another thing is I didn't mention this with the moon, but this applies to the moon too, is that You have no magnetic field, you have no atmosphere. So not only do you have to worry about the micrometeorites, you really have to worry about radiation. So all the buildings on Mars are probably going to need to be like radiation dampening. Um, and then I could see a lot of like limits on lifetime hours you're allowed to spend outside. Um, and so this might be interesting because people might go a little stir crazy because they can't go outside as much on Mars because of all the radiation. However, they might prioritize and optimize by going outside at night. What do you think about that? I haven't really seen that ever really addressed in sci-fi, but I could see like sort of like almost nocturnal societies on Mars because at nighttime the radiation is far less, so you can go and complete activities outside on the surface. What do you think about that?
Yeah, oh, there's just a lot of things that we're gonna need to prepare for the
Yeah.
move to Mars, dust storms, yeah, the radiation, just general temperatures and
Yep.
oxygen.
Yeah.
But I feel like that's always like the weirdest thing to me is that Mars doesn't have like it doesn't really have oxygen
Hmm.
in its air. Like the air is not really too breathable, right? Like
Yeah.
you will die.
It's
Um,
super thin also. So like even if it were pure O2,
yeah.
it would not be breathable
Yeah,
either
so
way.
you can't breathe on
Hmm.
Mars. And what's weird to me is that we have so many pictures of it that it could
Hmm.
almost be like cataloged next to any other place on Earth. But the difference
Hmm.
is you cannot breathe there, you know?
Yes.
So there's a
Yeah.
lot of challenges. So with the nocturnal thing,
Yeah.
yeah, honestly, I could see that happening because people are going to be out of their depth. And I think that's something
Hmm.
that we've never really had to deal with as humans before, being
Yeah.
somewhere that is completely out of our depth. Because,
Yeah.
say, we get space tourists, which is what we're calling them now, I guess,
Hmm.
and we get people to Mars, we get people to the moon, Venus, all that. Not everyone is going to be an astrophysicist, and not everyone is
Yeah.
going to work at NASA. So there are going to be people living on Mars and having no idea how any of the technology works, how it got to be here, why they have to
Hmm.
do certain things. They're going to have no idea. So I think it's because of this out of their depth thing that they will kind of adhere more to authority. So
Mm.
if
Yeah.
the scientists say, hey, you might want to go nocturnal, you might not want to go outside during the day because of radiation, I feel like people will be more likely to say yes because they
Hmm.
don't understand and they know that they don't
Yeah.
understand is the thing. So
Yeah.
that's also going to be really interesting when you get an entire population of people that do not understand
Mm.
how they are kept alive, you know?
Yes. I mean, we don't like viewer, how does your phone work?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, I don't know. I have no idea.
But if Apple came out and was like, hey, your iPhone might explode if you don't press the power button once in a
Uh-huh.
while, people are going to be like, okay. And
Oh,
they're going to press the power
yeah.
button once in a while
Yeah.
because they don't know, you know?
Yeah. Well, that's very interesting. Let's actually move to cities. That brings up a concern, an interesting concern. So, that this just applies to space in general is that on Earth, right? Food, water, but primarily air. Air is like an inalienable human right, essentially. I mean, you don't think about it.
Debatable.
Air, right? Air is just a human right, not because anyone has like designated it such or thought about it as such, but because it is just always around.
Yeah.
No one like no company is able to just say like, or no government can just deny people air. I mean, it can,
Lorax.
strangle and suffocate people
Cue the
through the
Lorax.
Lorax, right? But like that is a method of assassination,
Yeah.
essentially. It's not like something that happens in day-to-day life where people struggle like people struggle on Earth right now, like with starvation or dehydration. Like they don't have access to food or water, um, and like that's a big problem. But there isn't much of a struggle for air, although there is like with a lot of industrialization, air quality is reducing, but still, it's not as severe as problems with food or water. But in space, on Mars or on anywhere else, when you have a city, there will be like, someone has to provide you with air, and that someone, may be benevolent or malevolent. So you have to sort these things out before they become problems, hopefully. Although that will not happen. No problem in space. I am just saying this now. Like 90% of the problems will not be sorted out preemptively, even though they very well could be. And this is not pessimistic, but just look at the internet, right? The internet is currently governed by like 20-year laws. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There is a very, very poor ability to preempt problems. So, yeah. So hopefully no one abuses people by like threatening to revoke their air privileges.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know, you will not speak poorly about me, or I shall revoke your air privileges.
Yeah.
What do you think? But anyway, so cities, bases will develop into cities.
I feel like that would be cataloged under history. Like I feel like there would be an instance of that. Like
there's gonna be an instance.
The
probably.
Whatever incident.
The whatever incident.
The Olympus Mons incident, where a mayor of a town around Olympus Mons went rogue and turned off the oxygen.
Oh gosh. Or I could see more like a politician, some reporter is being inconvenient, so they like turn off the oxygen to their dome, like their personal like habitat.
And then they make it look like, oh no, he just had a heart attack.
Yeah, it was an accident.
Or they pump anything else, because there would have to be vents going into literally every single habitat.
Yeah.
So they could throw anything they want in the vents and just have it go to a specific person. Ooh.
I mean, you could also have instances like Flint, Michigan equivalent. I mean, Flint, Michigan with the lead in the water. Like, how does that happen, You could essentially get some town is like, the government doesn't care about them enough, so they're just like, yeah, we're not going to like filter out all the carbon monoxide from your air.
Mm-hmm.
Just like barely enough of it, and so big issues there. Ideally, they would be preemptively like we would establish legal codes and say, hey guys, let's not do horrific dystopian things. But no, they have to happen before legislation even has the possibility to handle it,
Mm-hmm.
Like think of all the dystopian things going on today that just aren't being legislated. So anyway,
anywho,
we prefer space optimism here, right? So so I think it would be very fascinating to have nocturnal people on Mars. I have like never seen this addressed in sci-fi. I've read quite a few sci-fi books about Mars. They never talk about the possibility of like going nocturnal for the sake of like less radiation, So I just find that an interesting point. Like, I could see them being like the Fremen on Arrakis.
Yes.
That I just finished reading.
Very good book. I don't think I've talked about it a lot on this live stream.
Very high quality book. But yeah, Arrakis is just like hot Mars in a lot of ways. Like,
dude, I've given up. I've given up on my hair. I've been like,
is it getting rough?
It's getting a little rough. It's like this one big strand of my hair is like popping out.
Oof.
But you know what? Maybe this is the new hairstyle. This is this cowlick right
Mars.
Here. That's the Mars.
Yep.
You see someone with it, or I guess it go the other way. That I can't do the mirrored it thing, but that swoop. That's how you know they're a Martian.
Nice. So we got some chat. Their name is in Russian, so like Russian characters, Cyrillic.
Oh yeah, I haven't been
I'm
looking
just
at
gonna
them.
assume I'm just gonna call them Ace. So Ace says, no one comments, ha ha ha. Now I can spam. Best yes, Coco Melon. Best. I don't even know what this person's talking about.
Shout out to Russia
Shout out to
or
Russia,
any other country that uses the Cyrillic alphabet.
providing us endless entertainment.
Always.
Um,
From 1917 and onwards, providing us endless
yeah,
entertainment.
lots of entertainment from Russia. Anyway, oh, I'm so excited for All Mankind. They're gonna have Reagan in it,
Nice.
like season two. It's
Is
gonna
the
have
threat
Reagan.
real?
Yes, sir. I believe so. It is. Um,
Oh my god.
it's fascinating because in the show for All Mankind, like Nixon fails to get reelected
Mm.
for whatever reason. I forget why, but like he fails to get reelected. So it's like Kennedy, like Ted Kennedy,
Yeah.
is elected instead.
Ooh.
Because like I forget, like for some reason Chapek. Yeah, okay. So this is very interesting with the show. Basically, since the Russians land on the moon before like the intended date for Apollo 11,
Mm-hmm.
what happens is like Ted Kennedy rushes back from like his vacation essentially to Congress, and they have a ton of congressional hearings, which causes the Chappaquiddick incident not to occur. So then he like successfully runs for president in 1972 and wins. So then Nixon isn't president, Watergate doesn't happen. Just very fascinating timeline. Yet somehow Reagan is just that powerful of a figure that he gets elected in 1980 anyway.
Wow.
So I am very excited for All Mankind season 2. I cannot wait. It's coming out in February. I am, you know, I would not be so hyped for this if like everything else wasn't so disastrous right now.
Mm.
You know what I mean? I'm
Yeah.
like, this is the one shining beacon.
Yes.
Man, junior year, this second semester of junior year, I feel like is going to be my most stressful semester of high school yet. And I assume senior year won't be as stressful. But people have always said it to me, you know? I mean, people always say junior year is the most stressful. And at the start of this year, I was like, I don't know what they're talking about. But now I'm like, oh, geez, this is not fun. But it is okay because today's a 3-day weekend, so I'm fine. But anyway, cities on Mars. I don't know what else we have to say about that.
Mars.
It'll be cool.
It'll
It'll
be
be
cool.
very fun, very exciting. I want to retire on Mars,
Solid.
right? Like, wouldn't you want to retire on? I think that is the ideal retirement location. You know,
Mm-hmm.
very like, you know, isolated. You know, there won't be any kids running around on your lawn because you won't
I don't
have a
know.
lawn.
I would prefer. I would prefer the moon, to be honest.
You'd prefer the moon to retire?
Yeah.
Dude, what are you on? Okay,
What do you
okay.
mean?
Okay. The gravity on the moon, I feel like would be inconveniently low. For Mars, it's like nice. It's relaxing, relaxes your joints and your bones. You don't have to worry about it. But like on the moon, like it just seems like too low. I feel like it would present a problem. Like you tap your foot and then you're just like it propels you into the
Yeah,
air.
but I'm sure they
It
would
would be
have.
annoying.
I'm sure they would have technology to mitigate.
Okay,
that.
I'm just saying that's the gravity aspect for one.
Okay.
Second, the day-night cycle on the moon
Yes.
sucks. It's like 2 weeks of day, 2 weeks of night. Who wants to deal with that?
Me. I want to deal with that.
You want to deal with that? I would
wanna
prefer
deal with that.
Mars is very Earth-like in
Yeah.
this
See,
way.
you can't
With the
expand your
coincidence.
horizons.
Yeah, no.
All you want to
see,
do
the
is go to
circadian rhythm.
Mars.
Listen,
Yeah.
I do not sleep well, so I'm not dealing with wonky moon time, okay? I'm dealing with Mars time, which is just pretty much Earth time.
I want to make moon lore, dude. I want to make moon lore. I want to be part of.
lore.
I want to be part of moon.
You want to be part of moon history?
Moon history, man. That's where
I want to be part of Mars history.
Mars
Think about it.
history.
So
Yes, man.
it's just it's like it's also kind of distant. You know, I like that. People won't be able to worry you with all their problems. You know, people won't be able to like say, "Oh, get that report in." Like you're sort of like you're casual. You're out. You know, you're out in the distance. You know, and it takes a while for people to communicate with you. So people can't expect a quick response. I like that sort of thing. Like there's a lot of like right now, even if you're on vacation from work, like you still have to be checking your email. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
That's not fun. You know.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
guess there
I
is
like
the
Mars.
aspect that you get to be like, I went to another planet instead of I
Yeah,
went.
like the moon is still in the Earth system. It's gravitationally bounded. You know, Mars is just it's nice. It takes 9 months to get there. You know, it's just sort of the ideal like no one can bother you zone.
Yeah.
Um, I like that. I like Mars. So ideal in retirement. But yeah, let's check out orbital infrastructure for Mars.
Yeah. Oh, we've been on that slide for a little bit.
Oh,
I
okay.
apologize.
It's okay. Orbital infrastructure for Mars. This is what I was talking about with the Deep Space Gateway for Artemis is a thing in orbit of the moon as well as a base on the moon, so that like if we want a Mars mission, right? First we
Ignore
what
it.
have you
Ignore it.
what have you
That's for
okay.
later. That's for later.
Okay, that's for
Don't look
later.
at it.
Okay, I won't look at it. So uh, Artemis, um, like if you want to go to Mars from Earth with this sort of Artemis infrastructure, what you'll likely get is like first you take the 3 day shuttle to the moon,
You take the
then you
moon, and you take. Sorry.
then you have a layover on the moon, and then you start the long haul to Mars. That's sort of what you'd expect. Um, and so, yeah, Mars needs that orbital infrastructure. Like I said, you might want to colonize the moon backwards by starting with satellites and then going to on ground infrastructure. We've already done that. We already have satellites around Mars, which is great. You'd probably want to establish communication satellites like before you land on Mars, even. You know what I mean? We might want to set up, 24 APS satellites. You know what that would be? Like instead of global, geo positioning system, you would have aereo positioning system for Mars.
Nice.
Um, so so yeah. So also Phobos and Deimos, I think it would be a very good idea to like set them up as little bases because you get it's essentially just a free asteroid colony, because they are just captured asteroids. So it would be a very good idea to establish a presence on Phobos and Deimos. Anyway, that's orbital infrastructure for Mars.
Yes.
Now, let's see. What
Yeah,
have you done?
I need to present again for
Okay.
this. Ooh,
Okay.
okay. All right. Some memes from the future.
All right.
The Neo Angeles girl.
Okay.
She doesn't like the gravity on Luna. She just like Max has just said, she thinks it's too low to be convenient.
Mhm.
She says that she won't eat GMO foods, but she eats mite bites on a daily basis. So,
Okay.
you know,
Hypocrisy.
yeah, hypocrisy. She says, "Hey, let's go to the Glasslands at 2100."
Uh huh.
She claims she knows history, but she doesn't know who Max Rudin is.
Okay.
And she's always saying, "Oh, where is the nearest rig?" Because Lord knows her transponder is always out of battery. So that's the Neo Angeles girl. And
All
then
right.
for true gender equality, we have the
Yeah.
Palace Prime boy.
Okay.
He says, "Don't you guys have anything else besides Beetlejuice?" And he
Uh,
brags about Palace Prime's universal ranking, but he barely passed his physical aptitude
ooh.
test. He says, "You guys keep kicking me out of VR parties."
Oh my
He
god.
claims to have personally met XA12.
Yes. XA12. Oh
He
my
says he's
god.
a geography buff, but he can't name the capital of Venus. Ooh,
Wow.
shame.
That's tough.
And he says,
Yeah.
and he's trying to be a cool guy. He says, "I personally find Mars to be somewhat warm." Like he's trying to prove a point.
Wow. Trying to prove he's yeah.
Them Palace Primes, them Palace Primeans, always trying to act like something they're not.
Wow. Anyway, Venus.
Venus.
Venus. So our first steps onto Venus will have to be not steps on the ground. They will have to be in the atmosphere, upper atmosphere. This is a
Yes.
focus of my second book. So learn all about it.
Learn all about it.
Let's
Oh,
look at the flag
yeah,
of
there we
Venus.
go. There's the flag.
What do you guys think? So, blue is the sky because Venus, you'd probably, and this is, we're all floating on floating like cities. So, blue is the sky. Venus would have a very Earth like sky. Also, the tan semicircle is the sun because they've got a very bright sun on Venus. Then in the middle, you've got the yellowy tan like atmosphere. That's the coloration of the atmosphere. And the green semicircle is for the green floating cities. Then on the ground, you've got green with a blue semicircle, which is the hopes for one day terraforming Venus, which would be a very lengthy process. So there's your tricolor Venus flag. So yeah.
I like it.
Thank you.
Outposts.
Yes, this is a pick from NASA's Havoc mission, the design concepts. We honestly just did a whole video about that. Just watch that.
Yeah.
So the outposts, the original research facilities, again, it's like the same thing as we were saying. It's going to research what we can do with the materials on Venus. I think that'll be a big focus. Just the challenges of dealing with the acidic rain and there's a lot of carbon dioxide, but also nitrogen in the atmosphere that could be useful. Just figuring out how to utilize those resources is very important. Figuring out how to make stable, buoyant cities on blimps, that's going to be difficult too. But something very convenient about Venus is that they have 90% the gravity Earth does. So people really won't have to worry about any sort of negative health effects. Because Venus has an atmosphere, a very thick atmosphere, it partially deflects radiation, although it doesn't have a magnetic field. So, it's not exactly ideal Earth weather, but, it's still pretty nice. Also, you're able to traverse outside with just an oxygen mask and maybe a bit of a heat retardant suit, like a firefighter suit, essentially a firefighter's outfit would probably suffice on, Venus at this altitude of about 50 to 55 kilometers, because the atmosphere will be about as thick as it is on Earth, except it won't be produced of the right materials, and it'll be a bit hotter than ideal, but not ridiculous. I mean, it would be in the 160s or 170s Fahrenheit, which is rough, but if you've got the proper equipment, you can handle it. And that is much less than like on Mars, you need full spacesuits practically. So that will give Venus a very, that'll be a big draw for Venus. You can feel the wind on your face. It'll feel like when you open the oven, and you look in at the food and you just get hit with a blast of hot air.
Yeah.
That's how it would feel. But it is still better than nothing, So that is Outposts on Venus.
Bases.
Yeah, bases. You get more people. You need a lot of hydrogen or helium or some other lifting gas to keep you in the air. But yeah, I mean, this is the same. I can't really think of anything unique particularly here compared to the other ones. Just the other bases. I mean, again, military hierarchy type stuff, just interesting sort of scenario. Venus, I think, might be interesting just because since it's such a hostile kind of environment, and that, if you like Venus, I would say, I guess this is one thing that changes things, is that, on Mars or the moon, you don't have to worry about constantly staying afloat, Even in Earth orbit, the worst that can happen is your craft deorbits, but you would hopefully, using an escape vehicle, be able to safely land on Earth. But on Venus, if your balloon, if your blimp, if it pops, if it leaks, you are just dead, because you will just fall to the ground. And if you survive the fall, then you are now under 96 atmospheres of pressure and at a temperature that can melt lead. Even our robotic space probes that we have sent to Venus have only lasted hours to a day. So you have to be very careful. Something interesting about all these outer space environments, but Venus in particular, is this sort of obligation to help that I think will occur. is that if someone sends out a distress signal, just because of how hostile an environment it is, there will probably be laws on the books saying you got to help them out. Just otherwise, society would not be able to function, because like I said, I mentioned before, and again, this is poorly researched and might not be true, but like you have to provide people with water in Arizona if they ask for it, just because it's such a harsh environment, that you couldn't not have that, right? So say that if a one of these blimps sends out a distress signal saying we are leaking hydrogen and we cannot maintain this altitude, then a nearby base would probably have the obligation to say, all right, your people can evacuate onto our base.
Yeah.
So stuff like that. And so, yes, as these bases get larger, you become small towns and eventually cities. So this is Cloud City from Star Wars.
It is indeed. We need Lando Calrissian to be
Lando.
Doing his mustache thing.
Exactly.
Feel like, whoa, hey there.
Yeah.
We need.
I wonder if Cloud City, the planet it's on, is based on Venus, because it's very similar, I would say. This is what you would get. You would get Cloud Cities. But again, I must mention, for every city, this is just true on Earth, is that for every city like New York, you need hundreds of square miles, thousands, millions of square miles of farmland to support it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So for every city, you have a ton of farmland needed as well. So again, agriculture is everything. You need that farmland. And farms might be very productive on Venus because you have a lot of carbon dioxide and a lot of sun. It might be more difficult to grow plants on Mars because you are farther away, so you'd have to worry about that. But yeah. Not much about Venus. Not much more I would say to that. It would suck to drop something. You'll never get that back. You know what I mean? If you drop something over the edge, it's like you're on a permanent cruise, essentially, right? Like if you were to drop something during a cruise, it would not go well for you. But yeah. But it's very nice. For a space environment, it's actually much more livable than you'd expect because, again, you can go outside with much less gear than you would for another planet. So yeah. That is Venus cities. Now, orbital infrastructure. Not much to say here, but just again, you got to focus on the infrastructure first. Very important to have that infrastructure in place before you land on Venus. You're going to want a lot of communication satellites, and possibly you might even want to set up some Skylab space station type things before your first missions, just so that there is always a place to escape in case things go wrong on the surface. Always good to have redundancies. But yeah. Anything you have to say?
Yeah, Venus, I could vibe with Venus, honestly. It might be pretty nice to look out over this sprawling landscape of clouds and be like, if I jump down there, I'd definitely die.
Yeah, it could be pretty idyllic, I could say. Yeah. Venus might be pretty
idyllic.
Life
could be a dream.
Life could be a dream. Oh no. Shaboom. Anyway, shall we go to the next subject here?
We shall.
Alrighty then. Asteroid Belt.
With the highest resolution asteroid belt ever.
Yeah, look at that. Look at that high res. Let's look at the flag. I made a flag. So this is the flag. Asteroid Belt Coalition.
I love this flag.
I would imagine each asteroid would be a sort of city-state. And the 4 symbols here are the symbols of the 4 first asteroids to be discovered. You've got Ceres, Pallas, Vesta, and Juno in that order. Also, you've got the gold, silver, and copper to represent resources mined on asteroids. So yeah, let's begin. Outposts. So this is from the show The Expanse, very high quality show. Highly recommend. But also, Asteroid Outposts. As with anything, you want to do some research first, but you don't really need to research asteroids that much because living on an asteroid is just like living on the International Space Station, but farther away. Like that's all it really is, you know? Um,
Mm.
these people are standing upright because they have some spin gravity, so you might be able to institute that on an asteroid. But yeah, the main purpose for asteroids is, I would say, the next slide, which is resource collection. Is that there will probably be offerings, and this is the sort of like going out west to make your fortune type thing of resource mining contracts. So you take a 5 year contract, say, and you spend a year voyaging out into the asteroid belt, finding some big, like 100-mile wide asteroid, spending 3 years there collecting resources, and then, say, a year coming back to Earth. Or you might just want to stay out in the asteroid belt and just think of the amount of resources in the asteroid belt. There's enough gold in like some single asteroids to like dwarf all of the gold that has been produced on Earth. So if you get any fraction of the resources mined from an asteroid, like while you are contracting, you
Mm-hmm.
would be a very rich man. It would be like the California gold rush. You know, it would be like you'd get the 49ers coming out. Yeah, the 2049ers, right?
Mm-hmm.
Instead of the 1849ers. You could get the 2049ers just all in 2049, essentially going out into the asteroid belt, searching for gold. There'd be gold in them, their asteroids, making their fortunes, you know,
Yeah.
setting up towns and stuff. Because that's another thing is that since asteroids have resources, um, once you hollow out an asteroid, it makes a perfect O'Neill cylinder, you know? Spin that bad boy up, and you got yourself a city.
Mm-hmm.
So very cool. But that's asteroids. Not much to say about them. They will likely fuel a lot of Earth orbit development. There is an orbit, you know, and shipping materials up from the surface of Earth is incredibly cost prohibitive. So the best idea would be to find near Earth asteroids and then asteroid belt asteroids and lug them over into Earth orbit and then use them for Earth orbit purposes. So the asteroid belt will be like the Rockies of the frontier. You know, they're going to be like the
Yeah.
mining stations. So yeah,
Very
going to fuel
nice.
industry. But yeah, that's it. So then gas giants.
Oh yeah, I didn't go over to resource collection.
Oh
Sorry
yeah,
about
no
that.
problem.
That is the
No
slide for
problem at all.
resource collection. Look at this
Yeah.
fantastic image. So there you go. Gas giants. These are made out of gas,
Yep.
and they're pretty big. These
Yeah.
were always my favorite planets when I was learning about
Yeah.
the planet.
I love
Jupiter.
Saturn.
Jupiter was always my favorite planet because I was a fat kid, so I liked the idea of the biggest possible planet. I think that's what
Wow.
drew me to it.
Okay.
Some would debate that I still am a fat kid. Be sure to check out Yui Films. But
Yes.
Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, or I always pronounce it Uranus. I don't know
Yeah.
how other. I don't
I
know.
pronounce it Uranus.
Uranus, yeah.
There shall be no immature joking here
There
at
will
the Gravity Max
not
live stream.
be.
We have high brow comedy. We have high
Yes.
standards for comedy. We're not gonna laugh. Haha. It's spelled funny.
Yeah.
No. That is not what we do here. So I always say Uranus
Yeah.
to
That's how
avoid
you say it.
annoying
Yeah.
people being like,
We
ha
need
ha,
we
so
need to
funny.
set a precedent for
Yeah,
those
we're
shows.
setting a precedent here. I can tell you for sure, the Uranians eventually, the people from Uranus,
Mm-hmm.
they will pronounce it Uranus. They will
Yeah.
not be pleased for the other name.
Yeah. So, anyways, Uranus is full
Yeah.
of gas and it smells like shit. But
They should change the name to King George. What do you think? They were going to name it. I'm just kidding. I don't
God.
think that's a very good. It breaks with the trend, you know. You got to find
Yeah.
something. But
Just yeah, we
the
got
originally
Jupiter,
proposed name.
Saturn, King George,
That was the original
and
proposal
that's
because the scientist was
horrible.
British and he's like, King George, do you love me? And King George is like, no,
No,
I do not,
I don't.
citizen.
Yeah. And then so next is Neptune. Is the last one over
Yeah.
there. Let's take a look at the flag.
Yeah, look at that. Very nice.
Yeah, so these are the astrological or astronomical. I guess
Yeah,
they
astrological,
function
but
as both.
yeah. They're the
Um,
symbols of the gods. So
yeah,
that's where they come from.
of the of the planets. So in order, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune. And I tried to kind of make the colors make sense. Like
Yeah,
both
I like it.
Jupiter and Saturn are, Jupiter has a lot more colors than Saturn, but they're both a little tan.
Yeah.
So I just tried to differentiate it with that.
Yeah, I like them.
But yeah, there you go. I was thinking I might actually combine all of these symbols into one massive symbol.
Oh,
If I could
that
make
would
that
be
look good,
yes.
that would
Yeah,
be.
let's see.
I haven't done
Um,
it yet, but I will
yeah. But
try
yeah.
and do it.
So let's start with Outposts. Wow, look at that. That's a nice
That
picture.
is nice.
Um, it's like Britain. Wow, that's
Oh,
very pretty.
horrible. We need a new picture.
Oh, horrible.
Live stream over. Thank you
You're the
everyone
one
so
that
much for
you're the one that got this picture.
Yes, I
I must
didn't
say.
I didn't notice Bigger
Yeah,
Ben in the middle.
bigger Ben. Yes. Anyway, so this is the gas giants are likely going to be similar to Venus in that you need to float. You got to float. Something difficult with Jupiter in particular is that it has very high gravity, so like more than twice that of Earth. It might not even be possible for people to live on Jupiter, and they'll have to live in orbit of Jupiter and then like teleoperate robots to do the work of resource collection. But at the very least, you'll have to train for quite a while. You'll have to lift a lot of weights to be ready for the crushing gravity of Jupiter.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, that's what you'll have to do. Very similar to Venus in the respect that you're just going to be floating around, but it will be much colder and it won't be really hospitable. You will need a very intensive spacesuit when you want to go out onto the surface, unlike Venus, which was more livable. So it'll be cold. Also, the sun is so dim at these distances that solar panels won't work very well. So you're going to have to bring some sort of power source, or you can mine it on site. If we figure out nuclear fusion in the near future, like a cost-effective, viable nuclear fusion, then the gas giants are a bastion because they are made of so much hydrogen. So there's your, on-site fuel. You don't need to worry about weak sun solar panels. You're too far away. You don't need to bring like uranium or anything. Just use the hydrogen there.
Yeah. And speaking of using the hydrogen there,
But yeah, resource collection.
with this space station
Incredible.
just taking all of the resources out of a planet.
Yeah.
I love that.
Nice picture. Yeah, so if nuclear fusion becomes viable, at first there's going to be a lot of helium-3 mines on the moon because you can sift that out of the regolith. However, the main attraction is the hydrogen in the gas giants. And as we expand, we might, figure out how to collect it. One big problem is the large gravity wells from the gas giants that make them difficult to collect from, but they're just such a huge resource that it'll be useful. Also, all the hydrogen and oxygen in these atmospheres can be used to make water and other things, other various useful things. Also, a lot of nitrogen and ammonia, which Mars, for instance, is very nitrogen poor. That's actually a big problem for Mars. That's like their limiting factor, I would say, is that once you add enough energy, once you make Mars hotter, once you, thicken its atmosphere, there's just a big nitrogen problem. So you might want to import nitrogen from either Venus or the gas giants. So stuff like that, all these volatiles that are very useful. Basically, close to the sun, volatiles get turned into gas and just stripped away. But out in the gas giant zone, there's plenty to go around. So the spoils are very useful. You'll probably have like cargo ships just constantly running the circuit between the outer system and inner system to deliver these resources,
Mm-hmm.
So very cool. Very cool. Yeah. That's all I have to say about that.
Gas giant moons. There's a
Yeah.
lot of them.
Yep, there are quite a few. Here we have the Galilean moons, which are the four spherical, non-spherical. I don't know which one of those is a word, but they aren't spherical.
OBS
So,
just decided to do the stanky leg for
uh-oh.
like a split second. So,
Okay.
um, for any lag on the stream, it immediately resolved. But for any lag on the
All right,
stream,
all right, all right.
sorry about that.
No problem, no problem. So let's do the flags.
Yes.
So this is the flag for the Galilean League or whatever, right? So you've got Jupiter, minimalist Jupiter with is tan, and then you've got the red spot, and then the four crescents for the four Galilean moons. Then you've got Saturn, which has 7 moons, the central one here being Titan, which is the greatest one. And when I say 7 moons, I mean 7 spherical moons. Then you've got Uranus, they've got 5 spherical moons, and then Neptune, you've got one big one, Triton. And so then, of course, finally, you've got this combo flag, which would be the Outer System Confederation, the Outer System Coalition, whatever you want to call it.
Mm-hmm.
Look at this design. I love it. It's sort of like a flower petal almost,
Yeah,
but
that's nice.
you've got each of the gas giants in the 4 corners, and then you've got a big circle in the middle and 4 crescents around them. Very beautiful. I hope to see this flag waving proudly on Ganymede one day.
Yes.
So let's begin with Outposts. Again, we just want to make exploration. Exploration is fun. Exploration is cool. Once we have people established and living on the moon and Mars, naturally someone's going to say, you know what? I want to send a few people to Ganymede. Just check it out. See what's up there. And yeah, so something interesting about these outposts is that they will have to, there's a problem with the fact that they will melt into the surface of the gas giants, because the gas giants are largely made of water ice, but then also ammonia ice and other ices, and that is very tricky because there are settlements in Antarctica, right?
Mm-hmm.
And those settlements have the problem that just the heat generated will make them sink into the ground a little bit. And so you'll have to worry about that. And this is all near future. We're trying to, the cutoffs here, I would say, is 2050s, 2060s. We're not trying to go too far into the future. So let's go to bases. Eventually you'll get cities, but right now we're just thinking of near future, just some development. You'll likely get bases for the purposes of resource collection and, of course, just establishing more places out in the outer solar system. I think this is cool. The base, I like this. What we got? Yeah. But yeah, I would say one big problem is just that sort of melting issue. You got to worry. You got to try not to melt into the ground. Hard to do.
And just imagine that Jupiter is over there.
Okay.
Photoshop was hard.
I'm imagining. It was hard.
It was
Photoshop hard. What is this picture originally? What is this supposed to be of?
Is
it just supposed to be Earth?
No, it's a city, I think, on Jupiter, and I just retconned it into being surrounding Jupiter.
That's fine.
Yeah, it is concept art.
That's pretty cool. I love concept art like this. Anyway, what else? So
pretty based.
Yeah. You might want to pretty based. You might want to deliver water and stuff from the outer system into the inner system. That might be useful. Also, something interesting is Titan in particular, and just a lot of these moons. They will be useful as computing hubs, I think. Except the thing is, they're out of the way very much. So they're an hour or two away from the inner system in terms of light lag, right? Mm-hmm. So I could see programmers, I could see large warehouses of computers just processing just various programs. So you'll say send that program up to Titan, and it'll process for 36 hours, then come back, For those long, like massive programs that you have to crunch the numbers on, you might just want to send them over. And the reason you would want to do that is that these places are very cold just naturally, and computers function best in the cold. Big disclaimer, they have to be designed to function in the cold, so do not just throw your laptop into the snow.
Do it.
That will not end well.
Do it.
Do it. But when a computer is designed to work in the cold, it works much, much better than a computer designed to work in the heat. It's just much more functional. So yeah, that's cool. So I guess that's it.
That's pretty much it.
What do you think? So this is the near future. We're going to talk about more advanced things in the next episodes. Obviously, we didn't talk about, no terraformation yet, no nothing. This is just a very, very basic type, like establishing outposts, dealing with the environment, expanding a little bit. So these are the earliest stages of solar system development.
Yeah. I am looking forward to it, honestly. Like the future memes I just cooked up.
Yes.
I want those to be a reality.
I want those to be relevant. Yeah. Future memes. Future meme review. It'll be fun.
I don't know if he would still do the clap for future meme review. I feel like he would do some other futuristic movement.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, gonna retire to Mars.
Yeah.
That's the final thought here. See you guys.
I'll call you from Venus.
Yeah, we'll have to just send video messages. It'll be very slow.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. Anyway, see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye. Oh, wait. Sorry, wait. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone.
Oh, yeah. So, thanks for coming out here, by the way.
Thank you all for watching, and Sebastian, thank you for being my co-host as always.
And shout out to the one Russian guy in chat. Hell yeah.
The one Russian guy, Ace.
Hell yeah, Ace.
Yeah, I apologize. I almost forgot to thank you for being my co-host as always.
Yeah, I almost left. Dude.
Almost left.
I would have retired. I would have resigned. I would have given you my 2 week.
2 weeks notice.